All set.
Okay, call to order. A flag salute.
And stand up.
Let me get the flag. There we go.
I pledge
I pledge
allegiance
to the
to the
flag
flag
of the
of the United States of America,
and to the
and to the
republic
republic
for which it
which it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty
and
and
justice.
justice for all.
Okay, the Open Public Meetings Act statement. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies, at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of the Act, the Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted at the Augusta, Branchville, and Sussex post offices, and notice sent to the New Jersey Herald, the Star Ledger, and the clerk of the boroughs of Branchville and Sussex, and the townships of Frankfurt, Lafayette, and Wantage. Mission statement. High Point Regional High School, in partnership with staff, family, and community, is dedicated to the quest for individual excellence. By fostering high standards of achievement, we prepare students to become responsible and productive members of a diverse society. Jim, could I have a roll call?
Mrs. Anderson,
Here.
Mr. Ancliffe,
Here.
Dr. Carrazza,
Present.
Dr. Dunn,
Here.
Mr. Arnold,
Here.
Ms. Nugent,
Present.
Smith,
Here.
Donna,
Here.
Dr. Kehoe,
Present.
Dr. Ripley.
Here.
Thank you. And we also have Ms. Kathy Hallowell.
All right. I'm just going to quickly run down for the public to make sure everybody knows that we're about to go into a training session with the public. At 6 o'clock, we're going to go to a executive session. However, we're going to forgo an update on legal, personal, and negotiations at that time and work on objectives and the CSA evaluation. And then at 7 o'clock, we'll start the public meeting, or resume the public meeting, I'm sorry. And then at the end of it, if we still need executive session, we'll go back into executive session to complete the CSA evaluation. With that, do I have a motion to go into we're in public session, never mind. We'll start the training session.
Okay.
We'll start the training session.
All right. Thank you very much. Everybody can hear me okay, I hope?
Just fine.
Sounds great.
Yes.
All right, good. It is so good to see all of you. I know that we had mapped out our training sessions long in advance. I thought that this would be how we do our next unit of training, right? But it's always rewarding to work with this group because you're so participatory, and even signing on with the conversation going on, got a good feeling about the work that we are about to do. Not that it's really work, but just wanted to kind of share some thoughts with you, observations as you know, going through the field service job and serving districts under these conditions. It's still the same, you know, high quality material. I mean, great references, and I'll send all of you a copy of what we're doing tonight later on via email. But I recognize, or at least it certainly is happening for me and my colleagues, that these online trainings and meetings are a little more exhausting, to use a very descriptive word, than being around the dais in person, right? These 2D meetings, for whatever reason, they just take more out of us. And in facilitating some of these workshops, in the immediate past, they're very different because there's not the same level of participation. And oftentimes it's just me yapping and yapping and yapping and yapping, which is not my favorite way to interact with people, if you can even call it interaction. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing you all because you are a very participatory group. And that's very rewarding for me as a facilitator, right? So by all means, as I go through tonight's presentation, ask questions. I'm going to talk to you throughout. And I think that that'll make things, more valuable than otherwise, right? And I also do want to thank Bill and Patty for jumping on a virtual meeting with me to just get our ducks in a row for tonight. So thanks for your time. And thanks to Dan for helping out earlier to make sure that I could share my presentation and all that. And as it turns out, as I share, I'm not going to be able to see your faces. I'm just going to be seeing a big screen. So, feel free to yell out or, what have you, but just let me know who's talking because I won't be able to see. And at the outset, any questions, before we begin or, anything you got before we start?
No.
Okay. All right. I am going to share screen. This is going to be very exciting. I'm doing this. All right. Let's hope I press all these buttons right. Okay. All right. I think we're good. We are going to, now I am going to switch this a little bit. Okay. So you guys should be seeing something that says NJSBA Services presents Roles and Responsibilities, 12 Common Mistakes. Is everybody seeing that?
Yes.
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 Awesome. Okay, terrific. So, yeah, this is kind of a fun topic actually, because it's always a little bit, maybe I have a streak of schadenfreude in me that I don't typically like to admit to, but it's always a little bit fun to learn from other people's mistakes, but it's valuable, right? So we've identified in our department 4 very common mistakes. And, the fact that they're common just really says a lot because the board members who make them all feel very passionate about serving their district. They are good people. They're putting out unpaid volunteer time to make tough decisions and really do what's best for kids. But, it's not instinctive. There are certain things that are really learned behaviors that take a lot of time to learn. And a lot of times our muscle memory pulls us back into a place where we don't really want to go. But, a private citizen or a regular community stakeholder or a parent or someone who comes to your board meeting who is just as passionate about the school can do things, in the meetings and can, and kind of exercise their passion for the school district and help the school district in ways that you just can't as board members. It's just different when you sit around the dais. So kind of keeping those mistakes to a minimum and finding out what they are, I think will serve all of us well. So we'll begin now. I know there's like 9 board members and a couple of administrators. So as I'm going through this, pick your favorite mistake and we'll talk about it at the end of the program. Okay. And our first one is impatience, right? And this is certainly not just common to board members. If you're an impatient person to begin with, like myself on occasion, you'll probably be an impatient board member. But what you might be surprised about is the most patient and zen among us, when they enter into board service, they become a little less patient and sometimes just downright impatient because everything we do is so methodical. There is a process to follow. There is a quorum or greater that needs to be at a public meeting, that needs to have a 48-hour advertising time. It is not a matter where you can pick up the phone, call someone, identify the problem, identify the solution, and be on your way. That is not board service. I can't see your faces, but I hope at least some of you are smiling at this because recognize the truth of it. So expecting to solve every problem in your first year just isn't going to happen. Some people think, especially those who are hot off the campaign, think that every problem can be solved in the first month. It doesn't take long to learn that that's not the way it's going to be. but it's okay because there is a process. It works beautifully. Public education in New Jersey still, I believe, I strong, even under the situation that we are facing now, is a top in the nation. So just stick with the process and you're good. It doesn't mean that the board is not smart. It does not mean that they need to agree with you. But it does mean that there's a lot of things to learn besides, all of the ancillary stuff about, district goals and price per pupil and what our budget is, but also what the process is. And that can't really be learned immediately. We'll move on to we'll move on to the right way, which, just to make a point, I like that third bullet point, and I think that speaks to everybody here. I think you guys get it. You don't automatically gain respect from your colleagues. You have to earn it. And then after, that kind of respect also comes hand in hand with trust, and it makes for a really solid team. And the work behind that really sometimes takes a year and product. To get there, you just need to sort of practice a little empathy, understanding what motivates them, have patience with them. If that means, a phone call in between board meetings or a cup of coffee here and there, I think that's worth it as well. Okay, so moving on to number 2, behaving poorly. Did you know that I don't really care for that cartoon, but there is corporal punishment still allowed in some states, believe it or not. But throwing temper tantrums is one example. Using off-color, using your cell phone to text during a meeting, throwing things. Yes, we have that on YouTube. There are board members who throw things during meetings. And, threatening your fellow board members or the public. I mean, I hope that this isn't too painful to listen to. But, insulting
And everybody else said
anyone.
their sound is fine.
Oh, how is the sound acting up?
Thank you.
That's Leanne.
How is our-
I don't know where she is.
Who's in
Leanne,
construction?
Anyone can hear me or no?
I can hear you.
We can hear you, Kathy.
Okay, good. I'm sorry. I just can't see anything. But I think this slide kind of speaks for itself. Like all of these are behaving poorly, bad examples. I'll bet you could think of a few more. This list could go on and on. They're all awful. We know that. Falling asleep during public comment. You know what? Let's take it a step further. You do need to just pay absolute attention, no matter what people are saying, right? Because not only does falling asleep look bad, but some kind of an appearance of boredom or distraction really does resonate the wrong way with the person who actually had the guts to step up to the microphone, or perhaps to the reporter who is in the audience who's going to write about the board meeting. It's just not a good look. But why do people act out? Why is this a common mistake? Well, because it's, it almost goes back to the first one. People are frustrated. They want a solution right away. They think everybody agrees with them. And they don't quite know how to avoid conflict. So to head that off, always honor the code of ethics, okay? And I wish that were automatic, but it's not. But it really should be, in everyone's wheelhouse. That code of ethics, do's and don'ts, really should be on everyone's refrigerator, if you ask me. And but out of all of that, just make sure, you may not know that, have that memorized, but just acting the way you would expect the kids in your district to behave, keep that in mind. That's kind of interesting when we're going to these virtual meetings, because there's a lot of different behaviors by board members, whether it's unwittingly or wittingly in front of the computer screen, right? We have people who are eating during the meeting. We have people who are, obviously multitasking. And it's difficult. I get it, because of your narrow scope of physical vision, really. You're not, there's just something in our minds that's not putting us in that board member decorum. But what I've suggested that people do, and especially since these board meetings get so long and they can be so boring, is to take a child's or a student's picture, take it off your Twitter page, right? Take it off your website, cut it out, put it in the corner of your computer, just any child in your district, any student, to just remind you that that's why you're there. And they may not be looking at you during this meeting, but you know what? They could be, or someone just like them could be. So just that kind of helps to keep your decorum in the right place if you're having understandable difficulty. Another one, publicly challenging the board after a vote. Once you vote, that's the majority decides, right? And I've talked to you guys about your authority is only in place when you're at the dais, blah, blah, blah. You've heard all that. I've done that with ethics. I did that with the OPMA presentation, I think. You know, it's important to work towards consensus, right? And you do that around the dais, and I know you guys do that. But every once in a while, you'll get a split vote, and you may be on the losing side of that. And the thing is that you brought to the table what you had. You did your best to try to help people see your point of view. You may have been unsuccessful in that, but the majority rules, right? That's once the board takes an action that passes, then that's the work of the board. You're a member of the board. To undermine the work of the board is to undermine yourself. The right way of doing that, you know, in fewer words, is just to fight hard for what you believe in, and then accept the will of the board, whichever way it goes, right? And you don't have to run out and, you know, scream about how wonderful a decision is if you don't, you know, if you were on the losing side. Like I always say, you don't have to buy pom-poms, but you do need to publicly support the decisions of the board. And that's whether, you know, the newspaper calls you or your best friend asks you about it. And you should, but in the other hand, the majority shouldn't be dancing in the end zone. You should be sensitive to opposing viewpoints. And you work hard together. You know, that's a teamwork. That's what teamwork's all about. I'll be sending you a copy of this presentation, but this is something that some boards have had success with. You know, there's a new board member orientation that districts do for new board members, and sometimes they put this in the new board members packet. Sometimes we talk about this at board meetings, and it's kind of passed as a resolution or just mentioned that, you know, could all board members sign it as part of a board retreat and date it? And it's yielded some good results. So it's just something to think about. To act like the Lone Ranger is always bad news. And I will tell you, I know a lot of lone wolves, right? And every single lone wolf I know, I really, really like. They are passionate. They mean business. They want to do what's best for kids. They are convinced in their heart that they are doing what's best for kids, but they will never get anything done because they're trying to do things by themselves. And here's some really bad examples of what Lone Rangers tend to do, right? Or lone wolves. They tend to speak for the board and act as if, you know, their opinion, because they are so convinced of it, is the board's opinion. They also tend to micromanage and start like investigating activities, i.e. following the buses around, right? Making sure that buses are at their stops when they're supposed to. To make sure that all of the chaperones showed up for the field trip, all of that stuff. Asked to go into a science classroom to see if the next generation science standards are being taught. That's what lone wolves do. It's not a good idea. Because, you know, the board may be a committee of the whole, but it's never a committee of the one. You guys work under the committee system, so that doesn't quite apply to you. But the bottom line is that a board member has no more authority than any other member of the public. Okay, not a bit, unless you are at the board table at a publicly advertised meeting of a quorum or greater. And then you have as much authority as your fellow board members, no more. And we touched on number 5 wrong way a little bit. This is so evident. Lone wolves do this all the time when you can't see the forest for the trees and you micromanage. You need to leave administration to administrators. And we as board members have the honor of taking the 30,000-foot view. That's what makes board service fun, in my opinion. It's about the what. It's not about the how. Our awesome administrators take care of that. So we have the ability to focus on vision and planning, right? And policy is your codified statements of your vision for how you want your school district to work and how you want the educational experience to come down to your students and your stakeholders. Okay, it's all about vision. It should be your favorite word as a board member. You know, to help guide you through that one and trying to avoid the micromanagement that so many board members, you know, fall prey to, is to think about what legacy you want to leave. You know, when they write you, I don't mean to sound dramatic, but when your obituary is written in the newspaper, it's not going to say that you followed the school buses around or you made sure that the parking lot was paved the right way while you were on the High Point Board of Education, right? No one's hopefully gonna say that about this stuff. You know, you care deeply about children, you're a strong advocate for public schools, and you are a good board member. And part of being a good board member is to at all costs avoid bomb dropping, right? So dropping a bomb on the superintendent at a board meeting is a common mistake. It is a bad one. I'm sure everybody recognizes the wisdom in that statement. So if there is a concern that you have that you want to talk about as a board member, you know, call the board president or the superintendent beforehand, give them a heads up, because, you know, a prepared answer and a prepared conversation is it's just a win-win for everyone. It's a win for you to get the kind of information that you need. It's a win for your superintendent, so, you know, they can contribute to the conversation in a positive manner. And it's a win for your public, because so they can glean the information that you are looking to seek as well. And 6B, superintendent shouldn't be dropping a bomb on the board either. It works both ways. So that's what your board packets are all about, right? Imagine going to a meeting with no board packets. That being said, it takes a lot of work to get the agenda ready and its attachments. So just make sure that you read them before you go to the table, okay? Any questions? I'm doing a lot of talking again. Does anybody have any questions as I move through this?
Doing
I have a
fine.
question.
Good job, Kath.
Kathy, would you say that having a board member as part
think
of
there's-
one of the school committees? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Would you say that it's Leanne, by the way, that having a board member on like a school committee that has something to do with what's going on in the school is overstepping and micromanaging?
My automatic answer, my first that comes to my mind is yes. That is being in the schools rather than being, you know, that 30,000 foot view that I was talking about. So that being said, you know, if the superintendent requested that, you know, I imagine that might be permissible, but in that case, I honestly would, if that's something that you both want, superintendent and board member, I would ask for an advisory opinion from the Ethics Commission.
Okay, that's interesting.
Because, yeah, I mean, think about it. There's parameters on volunteering in the schools. So serving on a committee might, you know, might very well fall into that category. But right away, when you say a committee for, you know, the day-to-day operations of the school, that seems to be at odds with the role of the board member. That being said, I think it's a very fact-sensitive situation. So don't take my word for it.
No, I get it.
Yeah, talk to your, but yeah. Any other questions that you'd like to put before everybody?
And just to be clear, this was actually not an issue at High Point. It's where I work. So I don't want anybody thinking I have
Oh,
that
no,
question
that's
because
fine.
it was, you know, that.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? Honestly, I got to tell you, one of my lines, and you might have heard it before, is like, and I'm not the board police or anything, thank God. I don't have any regulatory authority. I'm just a support, right? And I do see things that boards are doing that I'd be like, oh, how do you like that? But it seems to be working for everybody, right? And mine is that it works. If it works, it works until it doesn't, right? So, you know, you got to keep your eye on, like, what if the wrong person, I don't mean to sound dismissive or foreboding, but what if the wrong quote unquote board member gets on one of these committees, right? You're kind of setting the stage for something to go wrong in the future, even if it's working perfectly well now. So that's what I would, urge that board to kind of consider, and that superintendent.
Thanks.
All right, let's go back to my slideshow here. I just wanted to see you guys before. All right, let me display settings here. Okay. All right, so back to my big screen where I can't see anybody. This one, I don't think I need to expend much breath on this. I mean, you got to use your independent judgment here. Do not vote along policy lines. It's always kids above politics. I don't think that needs to be said to anybody here around our virtual dais. But you know what? The stepchild of that is becoming a ball carrier for others with hidden agendas. If you have someone who is a group of parents or a group of staff that are unhappy about a particular event or decision, I am telling you, and I see this a lot with other boards. I will tell you, if this is happening in High Point, I don't see it. But a lot of times people ignore the chain of command, and they feel like a particular board member or board members is their pal, their friend at the dais, right? Their friend on the inside, and they circumvent the chain of command and tell the board member all this horrible stuff, enough to curl your hair, enough to make anyone concerned. And they create a sense of urgency in the board member that is absolutely misplaced. And that is I excuse my strong language here, but that is a manipulating board members, and they don't even realize they're being taken advantage of. Please excuse my strong language. I've just seen a lot of damage done with this type of activity. So how do you avoid being the unwitting victim of that? Always stick to the chain of command. That will absolutely help you. And when you hear a complaint, as per the code of ethics, you bring it to the superintendent. You don't bring it up at the board table. And remember from our ethics training, and from other conversations that we've all had together, if you hear about something, if you hear a complaint, you're obligated to bring it to the superintendent. But what you should not say is, make sure you solve this, or look into this, or make sure you tamp this down, or anything. Just explain what you've heard, and then walk away and let administration do what they are hired to do, and what they're most capable of doing, right? So I hope that makes sense. Any questions on that particular one? Another one too is just to listen to your conscience too. You are all good board members. You've got a conscience. Listen to it. If you feel like you might be being played, you might be, right? Also, and also educate people on the chain of command, just in case they don't know it. And this is just a beautiful statement that I'm happy to send to you. Make sure you memorize it. It will come in very handy. All right. I'll read it out loud so everyone can hear. This problem could end up requiring board action. And if I'm involved at this level, I'll be unable to act on it as a member of the board because I would have conflicted myself and as a violation of due process. So you know what? You really need to go through the proper channels. Here they are. Boop, that's that. And that should keep you out of those waters. 8B is a sad reality because sometimes board members will get, elected who are those troublemakers that I'm just talking about, right? So honestly, having a global perspective, that vision, that mission, that 30,000-foot view, that's what you want in a board member. That's what your community want in a board member. And if you do have someone who's kind of straying into the weeds, who may have a passion, they never call it their own agenda, right? They call it a passion project, something that means a lot to them. That may require a little coaching, that their service as a board member is bigger than that now. We're looking out for the whole district and every kid in it. And that requires vision, right? And that's an honor, really. Illegal executive sessions, I don't think I have to waste much breath on that. But yeah, I mean, if you're trying to discuss board matters away from the dais with a quorum or greater, that's a real problem. And also discussing any kind of confidential matters with anyone other than your board members is completely illegal and against the code of ethics and can do some real damage. Okay, so just make sure that everybody is on the same page. I don't think we need to worry about that here, and you'll completely sidestep that. Which is, you know, mommy, this is its stepchild, right? The other, here are two, and I will tell you, that first bullet point, speaking about pending litigation before resolution, that is violated all the time, perhaps unwittingly, but I think that board members sometimes feel like they're helping a questioner by sharing some information to make them feel better about how responsible the board is being, but it's never a good idea, ever. Just keep your mouth closed. What happens in executive session needs to stay in executive session, always. And if you get an email that says confidential, that means confidential. And as like that other contract that I mentioned, this sometimes is put in board members' packets as well when they first get onto the board, right? Into orientation packet. It's just a good practice. It just kind of focuses your eyes in the direction it needs to be. Another thing that will undermine your service as a board member and compromise the integrity of the board, if you don't, if I may be so bold to say, is to behave as if you consider staff the enemy, right? And, you know, I've seen a lot of this maybe 4 years ago when there were a lot of cuts to school aid under the Christie administration. And, you know, unfortunately, there was a sentiment that was gaining ground about teachers not doing a lot and being paid for it. And what's up with tenure? They sit there and they can do whatever they want, and there's no culpability or accountability. You know, that is just, it's regretful to hear members of the public think that, but for a board member to get that impression is really toxic to the rest of the board and the district. So if you're creating like a you against us relationship, as it says here in the slide, you know, that's right. That's absolutely against the code of ethics, which is that you will support and protect school personnel in the proper performance of their duties. So the right way of doing that is to just recognize that the board and the superintendent are a team that are dedicated to student success. And everyone needs to consider the input of all of our stakeholders as we address issues in the district, but you need to respect the superintendent's appointment process and his evaluation process and his ability to just keep things moving in the direction that matches the vision of the board. Ignoring policy is number 11. I'm such a policy wonk. I would have made this number 1 if I possibly could have, because I love policy, but it does get neglected, right? And I wouldn't say ignore policy is necessarily the biggest problem, but sometimes forgetting policy, right? When you're making a decision, right? Or if you have something before you, I'm telling you, like 40% of the things that I say over the telephone when I'm working with my board members comes down to, have you checked your policy manual? What does your policy manual say? You go back to that. Now, sometimes policies need adjustment. Sometimes, you know, district realities require a revisit. Sometimes it's mandated from Trenton that we've got to change them. So, you know, doing that when it's warranted is absolutely a best practice, but overturning board policies on a regular basis to match the situation at hand is never a good idea. You know, that your policy manual is your vision encoded, really. And that might sound really corny, but it's the absolute truth. And also, to be a little bit more sobering, your policy manual is law. It's the school district's law. You all have a hand in making sure that that law matches your vision and your community's vision for the school district. So after all of that work, you should make sure that your policy is adhered to, especially by you, the members of the board, and your bylaws. And this third bullet point, never changing policy in the middle of the crisis, is key. And even something that might not seem like a crisis, right? And also know how to access your policies. When I was at new board member orientation years ago, I remember in my small group, there was a girl who had just been elected to a board that had people in place for many, many years, right? And she, after she was elected and sworn in, she went to the board office and asked how to read the policies. They weren't online. And no one could find the policy manuals. No one could find the books. By the time we got onto our board, our board training, our weekend training, it was March, and they still hadn't found him after she took the seat in January. Don't be that board. And lastly, this one may sound kind of counterintuitive, coming from a New Jersey field service rep who, makes her living, absorbed in board business, right? And a department that does nothing but support board business. But to put the school board, which I love, and school board services, which I also love, and my department loves, and that hopefully you love, above your family and your line of work, is a real danger sign. And that could actually cause an awful lot of agita and stress that will lead to you doing your job in the wrong manner, if I may be so bold. You have to strive for balance in all of your responsibilities and obligations. You owe your family and your employer that, right? So put your family first. If you are thinking, if you feel like you need to call your superintendent every day, I don't know if I can break it to you gently, but you're doing things wrong. Service as a Board of Education member should not be, unless there's a crisis in place, it should not be a daily gig, right? It should committee meetings, board meetings, preparing on your board packet, maybe interacting with the community when necessary and when, the community wants to interact with you. But it's not a 24/7 job, as interesting as it is. And if you're treating it that way, then your service is probably not optimal, because vision doesn't require, activity 24/7, right? It really doesn't. And I'm really happy to share with this slide with you, because it's the secret of life. I didn't write this slide. I'm trying this out. My life is pretty good. I'm not sure if it is the absolute secret of life, but you know what? If you're able to identify what problems you face as a board member, as a school district, and kind of focus on the proper way to solve them and the proper input that you can have to them, then the solution often just finds itself really easily. And lastly, I know it's kind of hard to work as a team if you haven't done it before, but if I may be so candid, one of the reasons why I really do enjoy coming to High Point is to see your team coming together and to hear all the conversation that you all engage in under difficult conditions, and to know that, you're doing a thorough job and that you are respectful of others' opinions. And if you don't mind my saying so, I see all the indications of a really good team in High Point. And I will also tell you that I don't say that everywhere. I try to get other people to that place. And if I'm a resource for you guys, then I'm really pleased to be one. It's my honor. But I think you guys are really moving in a beautiful direction. So I commend all of you for that. And that kind of ends the slideshow presentation. So kind of opening it up, I'm wondering if anyone's got a favorite mistake that we talked about.
I'm not admitting to any of them.
You really can't throw anything at the meetings?
What'd you say?
I said we can't throw anything at the board meetings?
Well, you can, but it'll go viral, as they say. So, and if someone takes a picture, I will add it to my slideshow, so I don't have to use cartoons, and make it a little bit more interesting for all my other boards. How's about that?
Kathy, I wish that when I first became a superintendent, or actually before I became one, that the trainings that you have provided were a part of my working knowledge at the time, because many of the things about which you just spoke as the wrong way, I have personally engaged in, and I have made those mistakes out of ignorance, but nevertheless, I've made them. And, you know, had I had that prior knowledge, my life would have been marginally easier over the last 7 years. Thank you.
Wow. Well, that's a pretty brave statement there, Scott. You know, and I appreciate that. I'm sure your board does. I'm looking at the face. I think everyone appreciates hearing that from you. You know what? It just makes you a human being, you know?
Oh, they've seen that.
Other thoughts, other mistakes that you were like, oh, wow, or oh, no, or how funny, or any of that stuff?
I'm gonna just throw it out there again. And Leanne, I appreciate you asking that question about having board members on committees. And I can see where it can get dicey. I can see. And having been a board member, first of all, there are some committees that require a board member to be on it. I can't remember that.
Well, that's true. Yes, that is true.
There's that. When we were looking into block schedule, I was invited to be on the committee that was going out to different schools, that was meeting in-house to talk about it, just to get a perspective of it as the chair of the curriculum committee. And where I felt it extremely, I loved it. First of all, I loved being with everybody, and I loved going out to the other schools and seeing what could happen in curriculum world with block scheduling. But I can understand going forward, going past all that, where there may have been some situations where it wasn't appropriate for a board member to be involved. And as much as I love being a part of it, looking back, the old 2020 is hitting again, right? What a year. But I can see where it could be a problem.
True.
Yeah.
I have, you know, when you work at a school, and I've worked in several different schools, I didn't know any better then, you know, and so as you work through, and I look back to all the schools I worked in, all the things that took place, and go, wow, like half of these were
Probably not the right thing.
Yeah, for sure. Witness to a lot of them, for sure.
Well, you know, it's interesting, Leanne, and I'm so glad you brought it up, and thanks for speaking to it also, Debbie. I mean, it's not all bad, right? Because oftentimes when you have a board member on a committee, it works to create buy-in, right?
That
Which
was
is
the
good,
point.
you know, which is good. The problem is that the Ethics Commission has said, you know, as far as volunteerism goes, and that is at odds with subsection. So, and you know, when you kind of apply that, it does match. And the problem is too, that if you're not successful in getting that buy-in, or even if you are, just working side by side at a committee level could really set the tone, set the a fertile ground for board members getting into, you know, what for a board member would be micromanagement, but for a committee member would be a perfectly appropriate role, you know. So, and when you ask the school ethics commission, which should I do? Obviously, they're always going to come back to the board role, you know, that's the hat you need to always be wearing.
Yeah.
Other thoughts?
I just misread one of the slides and I thought it said you can't threaten another board member in public. And I'm like, what? I can threaten them. But then I realized it was threatening a board member or the public.
Well, I guess I should change it to like, you can't threaten a board member or the public where anyone can hear you.
Yes.
Maybe we should do that with your mic on, right?
Yeah, right.
That's kind of funny, Gail.
Yeah, I just misread it, but yeah.
No, that's a riot. Yeah, I mean, you know, YouTube is full of awful board meetings, awful. And unfortunately, you know, of course, circumstances being what they are, unfortunately, there's not going to be an in-person workshop in Atlantic City. But if you all, one of the biggest hits for, I don't know, 3 years now. Debbie, you know what I'm gonna
Board's gone wild. Board's
That's
gone wild.
exactly right. That's what is the name of that crazy district in Pennsylvania that they always, it begins with a C. I don't remember what no, it's in Illinois somewhere. I forget the name of it, but if you know what, if I find the name, I'll send it to you with the presentation. Those videos are nuts. They are, and they get thousands of views. So, you know, any number of the behaviors within our 12 points might get you on there. If you, next time you go to a workshop, go to Boards Gone Wild, man. It is a laugh riot. It's really tons of fun. Tons of fun. And they're very polite, the attorneys. They never put meetings up of New Jersey boards as part of their presentation. So it's all good. Right. Well, anything else? Any other thoughts that
What
you'd like
what
to
I would
do?
like to do, Kathy,
Mhm.
we have one more training session to be certified for the year. Maybe lock in one of the fall scheduled meetings, and you can send us some suggestions for
Sure.
a training session you'd recommend.
Absolutely. You know, and there are so many, there's a lot, there's actually our repertoire is expanding as field services. And, you know, I was talking, I'll let the board deliberate this when I can't hear, because, you know, you might hurt my feelings if you say anything bad about how boring policy is. But we are, I'm actually kind of excited. I'm going to be part of a program tomorrow about bylaws and policies and regulations. That's brand new that I could also bring to you guys. But what other kinds of, I'm just wondering what, you know, off the top of your head, guys, what are you interested in? What do you like?
I gotta try to look at the list.
Well, don't even look at the list. What do you want to know? What do you want to know? See if I can.
One board's going wild.
I'll bet we'll get a lot of virtual participants for that one, Bill.
I'm
if we
hoping
do
by
it
the
online.
fall we're live.
Wasn't there one on like either something to do with either budgets or shared services, or I feel like it was something to do with us being like a regional district, and there were
Well, we do have a presentation on regionalization.
oh, maybe that's what it was.
Yeah, that's a pretty comprehensive, that's kind of an up to the minute issue, you know. We could do that. Frankly, I'm not sure, you know, who knows if we'll need to add to it or change it a little bit by the time I talk to you all. But that's an option, you know, that's another one. So I could put that on the list for you guys to consider. Anything else that kind of jumps out at you as being interesting?
I'm not really trying to be a suck up, Kathy, but the policy thing, we're just finishing up this year, our bylaws. And I think, as you said, people think this is very dry stuff, but I would be interested in a little bit more about policy. I think that'd be, so you tweak it, you get it all done this summer. and then
Okay.
bring it to us.
You got it. I'm your girl. I am policy girl. So you got it. Absolutely. But my feelings won't be hurt if the majority wants to do something else. Like I said, so Debbie, you advocate vigorously for policy, right?
Yes.
If the will of the majority is something else, then we will.
And I just have to say, oh, well.
Yes, with a smile on our faces, right? So, all right. So policy, regionalization, any other thoughts off the top of your heads? And I'll you know, comb through my resources too. But anything else that you guys are thinking about?
I'm gonna miss the legislative panel at workshop this year. That's something you could put together in a micro sense.
I know. Well, you know something? I don't know what workshop's going to look like, Wayne, quite frankly. I think they're still kind of, you know, refining it. But you know what would actually count towards board certification, if we could, is certainly to have one of our GR people, our government relations people, our lobbyists, you know, who work on visit High Point for a Q&A session or a presentation about any kind of particular legislation. You'd get credit for them just as if I were doing it. And hopefully I could also join. But that's, we don't have any standard presentation on legislation because it changes so rapidly, but our GR people are fantastic. I was really lucky at God, Jim, I think this was at the beginning of this school year when I was able to bring our director of GR to the Sussex County ASBO meeting. And everybody learned a lot from that conversation. So, that could be an option as well to spend some time. And you should know your GR rep. I think boards really should be advocates for themselves. So that's a great idea. I'll put it on the list.
I think policy's got to go first. Right, Deb.
Oh, so I still love you, Wayne. Okay.
Kathy? How do you
Yes.
do for September 15th?
Okay, let me look at my book, excuse me. Just in case. I mean, I sincerely doubt it because with this virtual format, my calendar's been kind of cleaned out. But let me just make sure.
God, I hope we're back to
15th Tuesday?
Yep.
All right, I'm writing you guys down.
Okay, we're scheduled.
Woohoo!
Are scheduled, woo!
I can add a Google Meet video conferencing, but I believe we will be live by then.
I
Okay.
hope so.
From
That
the
would be
old
really awesome.
years.
Oh,
All right.
Come up with a date. I zoned out.
September 15th.
Okay.
Okay.
Kathy, if you want to send a list of suggestions, what we've talked about, and anything other ones you come up with, we can select it over the next couple of meetings and get back to you.
Sure. I'd be pleased. And we have plenty of time. And as always, I will look forward to delivering it to you guys. I almost feel bad about it's only May, right? We're taking a long break. So if you need me in between now and then, just call me in. My schedule's a lot easier to manage now, thank God. So I'm at your service.
Right.
All right.
Thanks, Scott.
Oh, thank you.
Kathy.
Thank you. And I'm out. Bill, back to you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Bye-bye.
All right. With the end of the training session, the next is executive session. A motion will be made to the High Point Regional High School Board of Education enter into executive session to do the CSA evaluation. It's exempt from public participation pursuant to New Jersey Public Law 1975, Chapter 231, Open Public Meetings Act. Any discussions held by the board which need to remain confidential do not remain confidential will be made public when appropriate. Minutes of the executive session will not be disclosed until the need for confidentiality no longer exists. The board will reconvene in public session virtually at the conclusion of the executive session. No action is anticipated to be taken. So we'll go into CSA evaluation if we have a motion.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing no opposed, we'll move into executive session. Dan, would you let us know when we're in the executive session?
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing nobody opposed, we'll move to public session. First, unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business? Seeing no unfinished business, approval of minutes. Jim,
Do I have a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of April 28th and the executive session minutes of April 28th?
So moved. Motion.
Second.
I have a comment.
yes.
I don't, it's not a drop in a bomb thing, but there's no mention in our minutes about the conversation that we had about a liaison to Montague. There's absolutely not in our minutes. And I think that was something that should be memorialized.
I agree.
Okay. So if you can, I don't know if we need to do that now or we can, I don't know.
It is in the minutes. All right, if you want me to pull it out.
Yeah, I looked through it and I couldn't find it, Franny.
All right, I will look real quick for you and I'll tell you what page.
And I don't have them, so.
Because we made a motion.
I know there was a motion and I couldn't find
We're
it.
discussing first.
Yeah.
We have to just-
No, we made the motion and then we discussed it and then we almost didn't vote, but then we said, no, there's a motion, we have to vote. And then we said Leanne can do
We
the
made the
job.
motion to move forward with it. And then Ms. Smith made the motion, or Ms. Smith said that she was going to look into the position. And that was as far as with the motion. Let me just find the page for you.
Well, Ms. Smith said that I think she would take the position.
Yes, yeah.
And I guess what I'm saying is because this was a lengthy discussion and we kind of chewed it up for a while, that there should be some mention of it, even if it's not a finalized position yet, that we are planning on going forward with some type of liaison with Montague. Sending one of our own members to a Montague meeting to observe. But we haven't figured that out. I honestly don't have any access to my minutes at this point, so I can't.
I'm looking
I'm
for it.
grabbing it for you.
I looked for it a couple times. It doesn't mean it's not there.
It's towards the end.
Who sent it out, Fran? Did you send it out?
Yeah. I'm over here to the side.
Yeah, no, I'm looking. I can't find it.
I made the vote, and then Ms. Smith was going to take the position, so
Yep.
let me just find it for you. It was on other business on page 6.
It's
All
on
right,
other
and
business?
in efforts to ensure transparency, a positive and cooperative professional relationship, and open lines of communication, that High Point Board of Education establishes the position. All right, and that was the vote. Ms. Smith said she was going to work on creating the position. So that's on page 6.
Okay, thank you. I could not find that.
That's okay. I couldn't for a minute either. Talk about under pressure.
Small paragraph.
Okay.
And, you know, I had some discussion with Scott about this a little bit, about what that position would entail. But really, aside from just kind of, we're having a hard time finding some kind of language or, you know, like a boilerplate to kind of, you know, get off from there, kind of work off of. And there really isn't anything. So aside from, you know, if anybody else has ideas or any, you know, things that they would like to see for this position, you know, basically I've been attending the meetings when I know about them, because recently it's been a little bit difficult.
Yes.
So, and, just kind of listening to hear what they have to say when I can understand them. And I think maybe just being kind of a contact point for our students and the parents of in Montague, that for High Point students, for concerns or things like that. I mean, is there anything I'm missing?
Nope,
I don't know.
At this point, we're just approving the minutes. Is there any other discussion on the minutes?
Oh, I think we're fine.
Okay, if there's no other discussion points on the minutes, Jim?
Mr. Incliff,
Yes.
Mr. Arnold,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Dr. Karaza,
Yes.
Ms. Nugent,
Yes.
Ms. Tadona,
Yes.
Dr. Kehoe.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, the next session is going to be the public comments. These are for agenda items only. We're going to require the name and address of the person making the public comments. And in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, we will open the public comments for agenda items only at this time. Each speaker or each writer, because we're taking written comments and I will read them, will include the name and address. I'll time it up to 3 minutes reading it, and it'll be addressed to the board. We will limit the section to no longer than 45 minutes. If the comments are not respectful, I'll stop reading them at that point. All right, the first comment that we have a comment on the transgender policy from Kevin Craig of Warners, New Jersey. The New Jersey Department of Education issued transgender student guidance for school districts to help school administrators create an inclusive environment in which transgender and gender nonconforming students feel safe and supported, and to ensure that each school provides equal educational opportunities for all students. High Point Regional High School prides itself on caring for the unique and individual needs of all students. As a parent of High Point students, community member, and school safety practitioner, I have seen firsthand the difficulties that transgender students have in navigating through this often difficult process of transitioning. As if high school was not already difficult enough, these students face judgment, harassment, name-calling, and isolation far beyond the experience of other students. They face additional issues of depression, anxiety, self-harm, and suicide at higher rates as well. New Jersey Department of Education provides detailed guidance for school districts, which includes the development of policies and procedures to ensure that schools provide a safe and supportive learning environment that is free from discrimination and harassment for transgender students. This guidance also addresses adopting a student-centered approach, confidentiality and privacy, activities, school records, and use of facilities to support transgender students. Most importantly, however, is the statement in the guidance that says a safe and supportive environment within a school begins with understanding and respect. The High Point Board of Education has the opportunity to show these students that they respect transgender students as they do all students. The board can do this simply by codifying the New Jersey Department of Education guidance into board policy to make it clear to all students, teachers, support staff, coaches, and parents that transgender students' rights matter, and that all the High Point community will continue to be an inclusive and supportive environment for all students. By not adopting this policy and simply relying upon the New Jersey Department of Educational guidance to address transgender issues that may arise, the board leaves it up to individuals to navigate through the complexity of these issues and how best to provide needed support, not to mention legal requirements around transgender students. Even more detrimental is the message that will be sent to these students that the High Point Board of Education does not value them enough to take the simple steps of codifying by policy the guidance already promulgated by the New Jersey Department of Education. It is my hope that the Board of Education sees the value of providing an inclusive and supportive environment to its transgender students by adopting this policy. As always, I appreciate all you do and your careful and deliberate approach to the issue of importance of High Point community. Thank you, Kevin Craig.
Oof, just under the wire.
No, I was wondering what I was going to do. The next comment is from Debbie Roberts from Wantage, New Jersey. What plans?
Bill, I'm sorry to interrupt. Please forgive my indiscretion. These are for agenda items only.
So Ms.
I
Roberts,
understand that.
I don't mean to be disrespectful to anyone's comment. I'm just trying to follow protocol.
Okay.
If you want to proceed, that's up to you. I'm just bringing that to your attention.
or if it's not an agenda item, it can be done later, right, Bill? You can do it at the end.
I can do it. I can do it then. It's short. We don't have a lot of comments. And I don't think it would hurt to mention it. So I'm going to read it rather than wait, because we do have, I think we touch on this issue on the agenda. And if I'm wrong, I apologize. And it's just a quick question. What plans have been set to move forward with an on-site graduation? What will virtual graduation look like? When will the students be made aware of the scholarships? Debbie Reynolds, Wantage, New Jersey.
So I can give a reply to that if that's permissible.
Sure, certainly. If you'd like to, if you'd let me read the next one, because I believe the next one touched on the graduation also. Maybe you can reply to both of them, if that's okay.
Great.
I'm in receipt of Dr. Ripley's newest letter and was wondering what is the plan for an in-person graduation. I understand that it is reliant, and I apologize. This is Colleen Ranzin of Wantage. I understand that it is reliant on the release of certain state requirements, but August will be here before we know it, and I feel that a plan needs to be put in place. Many surrounding districts are already announcing plans. On another note, when I was sending correspondence to the districts yesterday, I could not find any board member contact information. When I called to inquire, I was told that the information could not be given out. Kindly told the secretary that the Board of Ed member emails are public knowledge and would like to know why email addresses are not listed on the website and why emails usually go through the business administrator. It is a lack of transparency. Dr. Ripley, if you'd like to address the graduation issue that's in the last two comments.
Yes, sir. Just want to make sure. Can you? I'm flipping between multiple screens to monitor. You can hear me. All right. So we are planning the best we can to proceed with an early August on-site ceremony. How that works and what that looks like is yet to be determined. And I know that people want answers to that, and I appreciate that and I respect that. As I've written and as I tried to clarify in the second letter, we are working on a virtual ceremony, as is every other district in the county, which is what is permissible at this time. And we're going to do the best we can to have that be as professional and great an experience as possible for our kids. We have our media tech 4 students working on it with Mr. Fenlon and the administration, and they're working diligently to make sure that it is the best that it can be. We spent, Mr. Talamay and the administration and the staff spent the past few weeks vetting vendors and how to best proceed. It was our determination that we could do a better, more personal product in-house. And so that's how we're proceeding. What we're doing in early August is we are doing the best we can to prepare for an early August on-site ceremony should restrictions be lifted. Regarding the question of scholarships, Evites are going to go out this week for a ceremony that will be conducted on the 27th of May for the scholarship, in lieu of the scholarship dinner. So the students will be notified this week. We're really not getting anything from the state regarding an on-site ceremony in early August, but our ability to provide a virtual ceremony in the tremendously small amount of time that we're doing it is indicative of the fact that we'll be able to marshal forces and resources to be able to put forward a a ceremony in early August. Anything after that would be very difficult for a number of reasons, not least of which students will be moving on in life and going elsewhere. So our hope would be to do it in early August if permitted. And finally, I want to comment on the board emails. That was an oversight. It should not have been that way. I believe it's being rectified at this time. I'm very sorry for that. I will say this, though, that I do not, with all due respect to the comment, I do not believe that Ms. Kaufman stated that they are not, I'm trying to look at the comment, that they are not public or permissible. She did say that she needed to check with me first. And I said, yes, they are. Here they are. Please provide them. And they were provided in a very timely manner. However, that wouldn't have been a problem had they been on the website, and that's being rectified as we speak.
Thank you, Dr. Ripley. The next comment is not on an agenda item, so I'm going to read it at the end of the meeting. We have 2 more comments so far, maybe 3. The next one is from Sharon McAuliffe. It does not say what community you're from. With the transgender policy, aren't there new mandates that have the potential to impose more costs as a result of requiring special bathroom and locker facilities, plus additional record keeping for students who will now be entitled to have 2 sets of records in a given name and their transgender name, etc.? The last thing this Board of Ed should be focusing on right now, at a time when state aid is being cut further and the board already raising taxes by 14%. And does this Board of Ed really think this is what the community wants them to focus on right now? I would also like to know Dr. Ripley's thoughts on this policy. Right now, we're taking comments, so we appreciate Ms. McAuliffe, your comment. We're going to move on to the next comment. Sharon Uchida, it says from 1 Matthew Drive, it does not say the community. With the transgender policy, aren't there, which looks like a repeat of Ms. McAuliffe's, with the transgender policy, aren't there new mandates that have the potential to impose more costs as a result of requiring special bathroom and locker facilities? It is an identical thing. Plus additional record keeping for students who are now be entitled to have 2 sets of records in their given name and their transgender name, etc. The last thing this Board of Ed should be focusing on right now at a time with the state aid is being cut further and the board is already raising taxes by 14%. And does this Board of Ed really think this is what the community wants them to focus on right now? I'd also like to know Dr. Ripley's thoughts on this policy. The next comment we have is Paula Mancuso. And the comment is, did Dr. Ripley include the union leadership in this matter? The next comment is from Ashley Jansen, does not say the community. Shouldn't the board and public at least hear from our superintendent whether he supports or opposes the transgender policy before the board votes whether to adopt it? So far, that is the comments that we have. There is one other comment, a general comment, and Ms. Rowland will address your comment. Ms. Rowland, or I apologize, will address your comment at the end of the session. So, seeing no other public comments at this point in time, I'm going to move on to presentations. And if Mr. Campbell is available to join us and grace us with his presence and presentations.
Mr. Keel, I'll be, Mr. Campbell sent me the presentation and I will be presenting it.
Great, thank you, Dan.
In May of 2019, High Point administered the new science assessment, the NJSLA, for the first time formally. This assessment gave us a baseline of how well our students are performing with the new state science standards. It's the first administration, and we hope that we can use this as a baseline for future growth. This test is federally required. It's based upon the standards that went into effect in 2016. High Point's STEM supervisor, Mr. Drellick, consulted with the Department of Ed regarding its creation, and all students who took the test last year have had their individual score reports mailed home. New Jersey's standards mirror the next generation science standards. These are a great set of standards which really focus on skills. The standards ask students in every science course to think like scientists, to act like scientists, and to know what scientists know. They're not content standards, they're skill standards that want to see students develop skills and apply those skills to each science course they take year after year. Let me show you a few sample questions of what our students face on this rigorous test. The first sample question provides 4 diagrams related to photosynthesis. And after viewing those diagrams, it asks them to answer a higher order thinking, challenging multiple choice question. Even better, the new assessment requires students to use critical thinking skills and to apply them to writing. Here's a diagram of magnetic recording and a data table related to it. And here is a writing prompt asking students to look at those 2 charts or graphs, to make an argument, and then to support their own argument with evidence. That's a critical academic skill that students in all courses and all disciplines are being asked to do. Make an argument, make a claim, and then find evidence in the text to support your argument. High Point's performance. Performance was based on level 1, 2, 3, and 4. 23.4% of our students performed at the higher 2 levels. Obviously, this is a baseline and we plan to see improvement. 188 students tested, and we received data on how students did in specific areas using specific skills. We also got subgroup data. Gender, disability, and socioeconomic groups are reported here on this report, and our plans to improve next year involve greater collaboration between our science teachers so that they can understand how these skill-based standards relate to each specific course. We want to increase professional development, increase the use of literacy, and we want female students, students with an IEP, and students who are economically disadvantaged to participate in more science electives. A few questions. 2021-22 is the first year that CUSAC will be using these scores to evaluate district performance, and it is not yet a graduation requirement. This entire report will be posted to High Point's website, and I invite you to contact me, Seamus Campbell, Director of Curriculum, if you have any questions or concerns. Thank you, and be well.
All right. Thank you, Dan, and thank you for Mr. Campbell, on behalf of Mr. Campbell. The next area is the board objectives. Just to review, the board gave itself 2 objectives last year. One is to review and update the Board of Education bylaws to ensure greater transparency and operations. We've all reviewed the bylaws. The past 2 meetings, I believe, we've started approving changed bylaws. And by the June meeting, we'll have changed or reviewed and changed those that are necessary, all the bylaws for the school. Am I not correct, Dr. Ripley?
Yes, sir. We have 12 remaining to approve at the June meeting.
So they will all be updated and approved.
Yes, sir.
Great, thank you. And also during the calendar year and the next calendar year, we have a continuing objective to have the Board of Education complete full credits per year of board training, and each member to maintain their training level so that we'll get board certification by the New Jersey school boards. We met it last year. We're on schedule to meet it this year. Other business. First, the superintendent will provide us an update on the lack of state aid.
Well, yes, this is something that had been communicated to us several years ago. And one second, I just lost my feed. There you go. I'm sorry. Forgive me. There was a 7-year rollout, 7-year anticipated reduction. Initially, we were informed that we would lose, after the 7 years would be completed, we would lose approximately $2.7 million of what's referred to as equalization aid. Well, in the first 4 years, we've lost 1.723 million, with 3 more years to go. I will say this, and I will elaborate further in a moment, but we that reduces our equalization aid, which is what we're talking about here. It is not inclusive of special education aid, but the state gives us aid of $3.33 million a year. If they continue on the pace at which they've set over the first 4 years, particularly given what I'm about to tell you, one could foresee the possibility of us getting next to no equalization aid by the end. What I'm trying to say is that while we have a fabulous community, we are not as affluent as a Chatham, and yet the state is going to fund us in a similar manner, meaning giving us giving you, me, and all of our community back zero of our tax, property tax dollars for education. Now, that is disconcerting enough. Given the COVID-19 and the economic ramifications of that, we have been informed by the state that, and I'm sure everyone's aware of this, they're redoing their budget. The governor will present that revised budget on August 25th. And we do not know as of yet to what extent they are going to reduce further our aid, but it is a given that it will be significant. What I mean by that is, as I've informed the board, I really don't know precisely what that is, but I anticipate anywhere from $200,000 to $1 million more in reduced state aid this budget year, communicated on August 25th. Now, that is a broad range. And the reason why it's a broad range is because I have no specifics. I believe it's somewhere along that continuum. I could even be wrong with that. I don't believe it would be higher than $1 million. Hopefully it would be less than 200,000. But that is something that we were aware of and that we're anticipating. It was mentioned at the last board meeting. And so we're preparing for that in the best manner that we can. And finally, there has been some discussion regarding the CARES Act that was communicated by the federal government. And that's money sent to each state, and the state of New Jersey got X number of millions of dollars. So I'm quite sure that people were thinking, you know, that's a lot of money. What are we going to realize at High Point? High Point will see approximately $55,000 of the CARES Act. And so that is, while that is appreciated and it's helpful, it does not solve the issue of the funding being reduced to the degree that it has. 27% so far already. Ultimately, we could be looking at far, far more, and we anticipate that in August. Let me be clear to all those listening, that will not change the tax levy. We will manage any further cuts.
Dr. Ripley, if I can just add in there, I believe it was last week that the Trenton issued a report that they estimate the shortfall to be approximately $3 billion this year, and that they need to find shared sacrifice from everybody to come up with that deficit of $3 billion. That's the bad news. The worst news is they're estimating a $7 billion shortfall for next year. And that was issued by Trenton last week. And considering how much they're cutting us, I don't think that bodes well for us.
I had attempted to communicate this to the various town councils. I have communicated to Frankfurt, I believe, a week or two ago, and I said, listen, I appreciate that this is difficult. I know that the fiscal 21 budget is a bitter pill, if you will. But as I said that, and I'm not trying to soft pedal that, I won't. The reality is, however, over the last 7 years, High Point's tax levy remains as low, if not the lowest district in the county. So I'm not trying to say that 14% in 1 year is not a blow. Please do not misunderstand me. But I think that gives some context as to our commitment to fiscal responsibility.
All right, if there's nothing else, do you have an update on the district health-related preparedness plan?
Yes, the health preparedness plan is what we put in place back in March. It is updated frequently and posted on our webpage. At this point, we have on the agenda for this evening a closing plan. It is required for us to submit a closing plan to the county office as to how we are going to close school for the 2019-2020 school year. That was administratively created and led by our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Mr. Campbell, and the county stated that it was exceptionally well done, and that is up for your approval this evening. Now, the reason I bring up the closing plan is because we needed to follow the state guideline regarding closing prior to proceeding with any reopening considerations. But as I said, we try to update the community as frequently as possible regarding the health-related concerns with which we're all dealing as a community, as individuals, as households, as families. And there's no way to make this easy. And I know that there are concerns and frustrations and disappointments. I understand that and I appreciate that. In the second letter that I wrote regarding the graduation, because I'm bringing up the graduation because it's relative to this overarching issue. Look, there's two ways to look at this. One is the devastation of you and your child possibly being denied that which you worked for so long and is a rite of passage in life. The other viewpoint is, how do you assemble given the circumstances in which we all find ourselves? And so health and safety, unfortunately, override our disappointment. And I'm not trying to say that disappointment is not bitter and sad and crushing. We have, however, followed the directives of the state. There are multiple agencies. I communicated a letter I think it was last week, yes, that we received from the colonel, who was the head of the State Office of Emergency Management, prohibiting any type of on-site graduation. That was issued on May 9th. One of the reasons why I issued our virtual graduation is because we had to get busy planning. Kids need to get their diplomas, and we were prohibited from doing that, and communication is vital, even when that communication is painful, frustrating, and disappointing. And I understand that, and I am deeply sorry for everyone, for all students who are struggling, and of course for the seniors especially, but for all kids who are missing out on a vital component of their childhood. It is heartbreaking. And so the preparedness plan is a living document that we adjust based upon the state directives. I will tell you that I reached out to the county prosecutor yesterday, because anything that is done either on site or at a neutral location in the county has to go through their office. And at this time, they're still considering options, but anything on site is strictly prohibited. Furthermore, they're considering whether it's feasible to do anything on an alternate site. And at this moment, I don't know if that would be permissible, but it would require that all windows be shut, all sunroofs be shut, and I know that there's a lot of misinformation out there. And I think to some degree, with all due respect, I think that the governor's handling an overwhelming amount of responsibility and weight and trying to do the best that he can, I believe. And this is very hard. And we talk about leadership and communicating difficult information can be very, very difficult. But if we don't do it, and we don't do it in a timely manner, it causes concerns. And I think in an effort to try to save graduation, there's been some mixed messages, I think. And so we are following the absolute written and verbal directives of the state and the agencies under whom we function. We follow delegated authority. And in this instance, that results in us having to send a letter saying we're going to have a virtual graduation. And the reason why I'm spending this much time on it is a part of our health preparedness plan, and that this ensures the health of any would-be attendee to an open air large gathering like a graduation ceremony. So at this time, we are trying to put together the best virtual graduation we can. And we will pursue, hopefully, an open air, as close to normal as possible graduation in early August. The process of reopening, we have received only in the last week, really, once the closure plan was discussed and finalized, and as I said, that'll be on the agenda for this evening to approve or consider. We then began to meet regarding reopening. Here's how that's going to look. Right now, there is no specific guidance, but we are looking into purchasing necessary equipment, whether that be personal protection equipment, whether that be equipment to monitor any incoming visitors as far as their temperature or other concerns. We are in a preliminary stage on that. I will tell you that the state provided Maryland's reopening plan, and that is robust, and we have that. I have multiple other documents, and I've been meeting on a sub-county level, the county level, and on the state level, so as to proceed with how it is we're going to reopen. So we are either going to remain in virtual on September 1st, which no one wants. We are going to open on a hybrid schedule, meaning a reduced capacity in some manner, which presents significant issues of transportation and other matters of difficulty, logistics, and what's permissible and what's not. And the third option, which I think everybody wants, even the most reticent student, of which I was one, I think people want to get back. And so our hope is that the best case scenario is we open up on September 1. It is my sincere hope that athletics are able to start practice on time over the summer. When people say, oh, it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. I say, look, I understand, maybe not, but we're in this now a little over 2 months and things are beginning to open up. That is still much more than 2 months away. And so I remain hopeful that fall practices begin on time and that we open up fully on September 1. But those meetings are happening in earnest now, and we will proceed, as I said in the last board meeting, with a reopening task force.
Okay, if I may add on that, Dr. Ripley, just to take from Ms. Ranzone's letter or comment, when she said I understand it is reliant on the release of certain state requirements, but August will be here. Before we know it, we need plans in place. And I'd like to say to the public that just because you're not hearing what the plans are right now, doesn't mean there's not a scurry of activity being done at the school to come up with those plans. And she goes on to say that many surrounding districts are already announcing plans. Well, I don't know that rushing to have plans that you don't know you can legally do is the best alternative. I believe that Dr. Ripley and the administration are taking the prudent path of coming up with the plans, fine tuning it, and when they're sure it's the proper plan and can be implemented, then communicating it rather than communicating multiple possible plans. So Dr. Ripley, I want to thank you for all the work you're putting into it, and I hope everybody appreciates what you're doing for them.
Mr. Keogh, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that, and I would like that the administrators and the board office staff who have been in working so diligently and meeting every single day, multiple times a day to ensure the trust of our community to the fullest extent. And I want to recognize their efforts, which are exceptional. I say to them all the time, and I know they get tired of me hearing it, you have an administrative staff that is so committed to the district and the community that it should inspire community members. I am a community member, and I will tell you that I am inspired by the leaders of this district in doing everything they possibly can for the good of children and our community. And so I'm sure they appreciate hearing that, Dr. Keogh. Thank you.
Okay. If we can move on to action items. The first action item is curriculum, instruction, and technology. Ms. Smith, would you address that?
Sure. So right now, items 1 through 4 are not included because of the situation we're in. So am I to assume that we do not have to do anything with those?
Yes, that is correct. They are still under consideration. We're still looking for direction from the state. There is not direction at this time, so we leave that on there as a placeholder so as to be transparent that we didn't just get rid of it, but that we need direction to be able to finalize those numbers.
And
Okay.
there's really no more information to report because that's all in-school activities since the
Right.
last one.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. So at this time, then I make a motion and seeking a second to for A5 through. I can move all of them together, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So through
11.
A11. So.
Okay, would you read it?
Yep, I'm getting there. I'm just scrolling. Sorry. A5, it is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education recognizes there are no curricular field trips listed. In number 6 is recommended that the Board of Ed approves the professional development activities as listed on attachment A6. Number 7, recommended that the board approves application for the CARES Act, the ESEA, IDEA, and Carl D. Perkins Career Tech Grant funding for the fiscal year 2021, and upon award, accept the funding thereof. Number 8 is the recommendation that the board approves High Point joining with a consortium of Sussex County schools headed by Hopatcong Borough School District to pursue $26,327 in funding through the Carl D. Perkins Career and Technical Education Grant. And number 9, it is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approves the High Point Regional High School health and that the superintendent is recommended by superintendent that the board approves the revised 2020-2021 school calendar, and number 11, the 2021-2022 school calendar. So make a motion seeking a second.
Second.
Any discussion?
Second.
No? Any questions?
On discussion on item 9, I was wondering, Dr. Ripley, if you happen to have it handy, what the response was we had from the county superintendent on our preparedness plan for closure.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Dunn. The county specifically stated that it was the best closure plan that they had received, and it was exceptionally thorough, well done, and followed the directives of the state, if that's what you're referring to. Item number 9, our health-related closure plan. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted, we take kudos when we can.
Yes, sir. That was administratively done, led by Mr. Campbell.
Any other
Roll
comments?
call?
No?
Any other
Okay.
comments?
Roll call. Mr. Arnold,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Dr. Carrazza,
Yes.
Ms. Nugent,
Yes.
Ms. Tadona,
Yes.
Mr. Ancliffe,
Yes.
Dr. Kehoe.
Yes. The next is personnel. Mr. Dona?
Okay, I'd like to move item number 1. It's recommended to the board that that we accept with regret the retirement notification of Christopher Kappelmeyer, effective July 1st, 2020. Can I have a second? I move it. Can I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I would like to say that all 3 of my children who went through High Point had Mr. Kappelmeyer, and all had very strong impressions of him. He was an excellent teacher, and he did very well by all of my children. And I want to personally thank him for that.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I would want to say that Dr. Kehoe was going to say Dr. Kappelmeyer. I will tell you that if there's anyone that I know who is not a doctor, whose intellectual ability would certainly supersede that, it would be Mr. Kappelmeyer. I have known him since I started working here, actually since before I started working here. And he may be one of the smartest people that I know. Has his master's degree in mechanical engineering from Princeton University. And so the title of doctor, particularly on my part, is certainly not an indication of any intellectual acumen, but it would be with Mr. Kappelmeyer. He has taught all levels of AP and physics, and has been has honored our community and 25 years of students. And it is a better place for his having been in the classroom over that time. He was also a head football coach and won the SCIL in 2001. So he has finishing a stellar career, and he is not someone that one could replace. And so I want to wish him congratulations.
Okay, thank you. Any other? Roll call?
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Dr. Carrazza,
Yes.
Ms. Nugent,
Yes.
Ms. Tadona,
Yes.
Mr. Ancliffe,
Yes.
Mr. Arnold,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Dr. Kehoe.
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to move items 2 and 3. It's recommended that the board approves the extension of the maternity child care leave, family medical leave, and New Jersey family leave to employee 1298 until November 2nd. It's an unpaid leave of absence. And number 3 is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approves Kia Pascas to continue as a long-term substitute of Spanish starting September 1st until November 2nd, 2000, as listed. Can I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Dr. Carrazza,
Yes.
Ms. Nugent,
Yes.
Ms. Tadona,
Yes.
Mr. Ancliffe,
Yes.
Mr. Arnold,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Dr. Kehoe.
Yes. All right, the next item is extracurricular. It is recommended, I'm gonna do both 1 and 2. Move to both 1 and 2. Number 1, it is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education accepts the resignation effective June 30th, 2020 of the following individuals: Brad Dragone, coach, girls basketball; Christopher Kappelmeyer, advisor, peer counseling. Item number 2, it is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approves the extracurricular appointments for the 2021 school year as listed on attachment C1. Do I have a second?
Second.
Do we have a discussion?
Just want to mention on item 2, I had shared some reservations with Dr. Ripley regarding someone on the list in a position. So my intention is to vote no on item 2. That's all I'm going to say.
Any other comments? If no comments, can we have a roll call, Jim?
Dr. Carazza,
Yes.
Ms. Nugent,
Yes.
Ms. Tadona,
Yes.
Mr. Ancliffe,
Yes.
Mr. Arnold,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes on 1, no on 2.
Ms. Smith,
Yes on 1, no on 2.
Dr. Kehoe.
Yes on 1, no on 2. All right. We're going to move on to policy. Ms. Tadona?
Okay, I'm going to move item 1, which actually includes a couple things. It's recommended by the superintendent. The Board of Education approves the second reading of the following new policies and regulations. The first one listed on attachment D1 is policy 1581 about domestic violence. The second one on attachment D1A is regulation 1581 on domestic violence. Attachment D1B is the policy 8220 about the school day. And then attachment D1.C is the policy 5756 about transgender students. And I'm just going to add that at the second I guess that would be part of discussion. So can I have a second?
Second.
Second.
All right, in discussion, I'm just going to say that in regard to the transgender policy, at the second reading in March, members wanted the committee to review the policy further. And subsequently, the committee has had further discussions about the policy and has decided to put it forward again with just one modification. The section addressing activities has been removed since there are unresolved legal concerns. And if cases involving those concerns are clearly resolved, the committee will revisit that section. Everything else is unchanged, so the board can vote on the policy as a second reading. Any other discussion or comments?
I would just indicate.
Go ahead, Joe.
I would just indicate in the past that I had opposed this policy based on the inclusion of that activities paragraph. I think that was a very good compromise that we made in committee to recommend to the full board. I believe the transgender policy now is simply related to the rights that transgender students are entitled to while they attend school, and none of those affect the other non-transgender students in the school. So I can indicate at this point with that deletion, as we agreed to in committee, that I could support this policy as it is right now. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions, if I may.
Okay.
First off, the minutes of the policy meeting is inconsistent with the minutes of the proposed policy. Do you want to just mention that?
Yeah, there was just a mistake and some confusion in the recording of the minutes. And I addressed it immediately when I saw the discrepancy, and I checked with the rest of the committee to make sure that I was correct. So yeah, the plan was the discussion was just to omit the section that had to do with activities and not anything about the use of facilities.
Okay. A couple other questions. If, am I mistaken, or is it correct that there's no legal requirement to adopt this? Gail, do you know?
The, our policy writing company with whom the board has done business since before I was superintendent has stated it was mandated as early as earlier in 2019.
And is that correct?
Is it correct that it's mandated?
Yes.
To the best of my knowledge, yes, sir.
Okay, well then I think we need a legal opinion on that, because it's my understanding, even our own policy says they're guidelines and they're to assist. And to the best of my knowledge and belief, there's no legal requirement whatsoever that this needs to be adopted. And if we're being misled by the policy writers, I think we should have clear understanding of what we're considering before we would take it on with the belief that we have a legal obligation to do so.
Well, regardless of whether it's mandated or not, it is our job as board members to set policy. So whether or not it's legally mandated, it's our job and our role to do so. So I don't know that it's relevant whether it's mandated or not, but I understand where you would want that answer, but I thought we already sought legal counsel on this.
Well, I believe we did, and it's not legally required.
I wasn't at that meeting, so I don't.
Okay. Okay.
No, it was, yeah, I don't think it, I agree with you, Leanne. I don't think that, even on the committee, I don't really think that we were concerned about whether it was legally required. I really just feel that it's something that we should be doing in order to show inclusion of students and to show that transgender students are valued and respected, and that it's clear to the community and to the students and to the staff and to the administration that they should be treated as such.
Okay.
So it's not really a question. We're not creating the policy as a question that it's a mandated thing, but we're the last school in the county and probably one of the last schools in the state to implement this policy. And I think it's really important that we do it, whether it's mandated or not.
Okay, so so you're recommending it, and you're not saying it's mandated. It's your voluntary recommendation to approve it.
As is
Yes,
with
I
any
feel-
policy, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, Bill, are you saying that none of our policies are mandated, or you're just saying specific ones are or are not mandated?
I'm asking whether or not they're proposing this because they're mandated to propose it, or whether they're proposing it because they want to propose it, even though there's no legal requirement to do so.
My position when I made the, I'm sorry.
Constituents know. Is there a legal requirement out there?
We think there is.
Well, that's what we're asking. I'm confused.
You're required if it's not required.
I just want to clear up because the agenda item does say it is recommended by the superintendent. I just want to make it perfectly clear that it is my understanding that it is mandated, and therefore I put all mandated policies before the board to consider. So the reason why I put it there is because I don't know. I do believe that legal opinion was sought, but I wouldn't presume to know one way or the other. I just know that our policy writers, who are attorneys, stated that it was mandated. So I put mandated requirements before the board, who can then determine whether they wish to pursue it or not.
Well, I believe that's a significant issue that the constituents have a reasonable basis to know before this policy is considered. And I would suggest that we either get a legal opinion or we hold off on approving it until we know what we're approving.
All right, but Bill, what is the harm if it's not mandated? What is the harm of implementing it as a policy?
Well, I'll get to that. I would just like to know whether people are voting on it because they feel they have a legal obligation to do so, or whether they want to tell their constituents they're voting on it voluntarily, knowing that there's no legal requirement to vote on it.
I'm voting.
I'll tell you right now, I'm going to vote
yes.
yes, and I don't. It's
I know.
not because of legality. It's because I feel it's morally the right thing to do. The state does have statutes protecting transgender students. I said this.
No, they don't.
There's nothing in state statute that protects transgenders people?
Specifically transgender, no.
Well, now
The statute that recommends the Department of Education issue guidelines to help schools consider policies. There is no legal obligation and no statutes that require a transgender policy.
That's not what Debbie said, though.
I'm saying that I believe there are legal ramifications to discriminating against transgender. I believe that to be the case legally. I also believe it morally to be wrong to discriminate against transgenders.
That's not the question.
Well, that's my answer to what I'm doing, though. I'm voting yes because I think it's the right thing to do for our staff who have gone through an entire training session with PD in the beginning of this school year, and the people I talked to were very impressed with how well this was handled, and they felt empowered, and they felt that they had learned so much about this and felt much more in tune to what this actually meant, not what the pop culture means, but what it actually means to the kids in their classrooms. And I feel it's the right thing to do. And I know we bring it up because it's mandated or not mandated, but that's not why I'm voting. So
I also believe that it is in line with our vision and mission statement for, productive and diverse society.
Mm-hmm.
And I also believe it's mandated to teach the transgender, to teach about transgender communities and
yes. Part of the
people that
curriculum standard.
are respected. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Spencer.
Well, so first of all, I'd like to echo that in answer to your question, Dr. Kehoe, I'm voting not because I feel legally bound to do so, but because I believe it's the right thing to do. Additionally, I have a question for Dr. Ripley. Right now, given that the board has no policy that the school is operating under, to your knowledge, is the school operating under the guidelines that the state DOE has set out?
Without question.
Okay, so this is codifying something that the school already does. And an important point that was actually brought up in a public comment earlier from Mr. Craig, I believe was his name, was if we're already following this, then actually codifying this and making sure that everybody is on the same page protects individuals from having to make difficult decisions, from having to take it upon themselves to try to interpret whether something is a recommendation or they're legally bound to do something. So for that reason as well, we have a responsibility to make sure that we have a policy that is clear and straightforward, that everybody can follow. And so I think that's important as well. If we are already following the recommendations as we should be, then codifying them only protects the teachers, staff, whoever needs to be faced with these decisions on a day-to-day basis.
One of us may be confused, Mr. Arnold. Dr. Ripley, so you have 2 sets of records for all transgender students?
I don't understand the question. I'm sorry.
This policy is going to require the schools to set up 2 sets of records for all transgender students. Are you saying you already do that?
I don't know to what extent you're referring regarding set of records. Records could be a wide or a narrow construct. I'm not trying to avoid the question. I'm just trying to be precise in my response.
It's your policy that you're proposing forward. It says a transgender student comes in, you keep 2 sets of records, one under the identity in which the gender in which they identify, and a second one under their legal name and legal gender. Do you do that at this time?
Well, let me first say to what you did state, there was a premise by how you based your question that it is my policy and that I wrote it or anything to that extent. Let me say this because it has come up in comments and I want to make sure I'm perfectly clear on this. As I've stated before, policy is a board determination. I put them on the agenda based upon the discussion of the committee and that which is recommended by the company with whom we do business. My opinion about policies is really unimportant and has no bearing as to whether the policy goes forward or not. I put it on there without malice, without prejudice. My personal opinion is not relevant to this matter. However, let me say this. We are following what we believe to be the law at this time to the fullest extent. If there needs to be two set of records that, to my knowledge, I think we do that, but I cannot speak definitively. But if that's what the policy states and it is approved this evening, then that's what we will do. I do believe that we follow that, but I cannot speak definitively about it. So that's my response.
Okay, so your answer to Mr. Arnold was not correct then. You said you're following, all that this would be is a codification, but you don't know whether this is a codification because you don't know whether you have two sets of records at this point in time. Is that correct?
Mr. Kehoe, I would respectfully offer that I am not sufficiently prepared to engage in such legal polemics, with absolute respect for your knowledge and understanding. And I believe that any response that I give will be parsed to a degree that I will be confused and miscommunicate. And so I respectfully state that I believe that my position has been presented.
And I apologize if I'm embarrassing you, but you stated to Mr. Arnold something, and I wanted to make sure it was clarified. We'll go on to another subject. Since you said you're following the rules, are all students entitled to have access to restrooms, locker rooms, changing facilities in accordance with their gender identity at this time?
That is correct.
So you have been, and how long have you been enforcing that?
Since we were made aware of the passage of the law.
What law is that?
I don't know the number, sir.
Okay, because there is no law that requires that.
Well, even if it's the guidelines, it's the guidelines. So he follows the guidelines.
All right. Can I ask you, what policies do you, this is to protect transgender and have people feel comfortable. What policies do you have protecting heterosexuals?
I'd like to move that we.
Heterosexuals are not oppressed and discriminated against. That's not a valid question.
I'd like to move that we end discussion on this and we proceed.
This is
with a vote.
I second Mr. Dunn.
Yes. Okay. Roll call.
Yeah.
Roll call on calling the question.
Oh, I guess we should do can we do an aye or a, all those in favor of moving on to the vote, say aye.
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 All those opposed?
Opposed.
Okay. I think it's time for roll call.
It looked like 7 yes to 2 no to call the question. So I'll read the, I'll do the roll call for the motion.
Okay.
Dr. Carrazza,
Yes.
Ms. Nugent,
Yes.
Ms. Tadona,
Yes.
Mr. Ancliffe,
No on the transgender, yes on the rest of them.
okay. Mr. Arnold,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Dr. Kehoe,
No on the transgender, yes on the rest of them.
okay.
Okay, item number 2. It's recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approves the following revised policies and regulations. The bylaw 0144, the board member and orientation training. The bylaw 0146, the board member authority. Bylaw 0148, board member indemnification. Bylaw 0151, organization meeting. Bylaw 0152, board officers. Bylaw 0153, annual appointments. Bylaw 0154, annual motions and designations. Bylaw 0157, Board of Education website. Bylaw 0161, call adjournment and cancellation. Bylaw 0162, notice of board meetings. Bylaw 0163, a quorum. Bylaw 0164, conduct of board meeting. Bylaw of 0165, voting. Bylaw 0166, private meetings. Policy 7242, supervision of construction. Policy 8462, reporting potentially missing or abused children. And Regulation 5330, administration of medication. And Regulation 8220, school closings. Looking for a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Nugent,
Yes.
Ms. Tadona,
Yes.
Mr. Ancliffe,
Yes.
Mr. Arnold,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Dr. Caraza,
Yes.
Dr. Kehoe.
Yes. Negotiations, there are no items at this time. Buildings and grounds, there's no items at this time. Finance, Mr. Dunn?
Certainly. Make sure I'm unmuted. So in finance, I will move items 1 through 6, which is all of the items in finance. I make the motion. Number 1 is a recommendation to accept the report of the Board Secretary Business Administrator for the month of April 2020. Item 2 is the recommendation to accept the report of the Treasurer for the month of April 2020. Item 3 is a recommendation to accept the report of transfers and minimum expense transfer report for the month of April 2020. Item 4 is a recommendation to approve for payment the attached schedule of audited bills dated May 19th, 2020. Item 5 is a recommendation to accept the adult education agency account, cafeteria account, principal petty cash, and school store account for the month of April 2020. And item 6 is a recommendation to approve the following tuition contracts between High Point Regional High School as ascending and the following districts and related information as listed in the agenda. Make a motion seeking a second on items 1 through 6.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion on those items? Seeing or hearing none, can I have a roll call, please?
Ms. Tadona,
Yes.
Mr. Ancliffe,
Yes.
Mr. Arnold,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Dr. Caraza,
Yes.
Ms. Nugent,
Yes.
Dr. Kehoe.
Yes. Moving on to transportation, Dr. Caraza?
I believe we just have the one item, item 1. I move to approve the following quoted contract for trips for the 2021 school year as listed in various locations in Massachusetts for a class trip. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Ancliffe,
Yes.
Mr. Arnold,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Dr. Caraza,
Yes.
Nugent,
Yes.
Tadona,
Yes.
Dr. Kehoe.
Yes. Long-term planning, there's no long-term planning items at this point in time. Legal, there's no legal at this point in time. Correspondence, we have no correspondence at this time. Miscellaneous, does anybody have a miscellaneous item?
Yeah, I would like to just say, I know that there's been a lot of concern with, the tax levy and obviously with everything going on in our, this recession. And I know there's been some talk or whispers, if you will, about asking either teachers or administrators or superintendent to either take a pay freeze or something of the sort. And I just want to say that not only do I not support something, but I think it's actually insulting to ask anybody that question at this time. And I get that there's a financial strain in various places, but this is a time when teachers and administrators are doing more than they ever have, uncharted waters, going above and beyond, doing fantastic things. So to ask them to take less money than they deserve is just something that I think is not something that I would ever support in these times. So I would like to say thank you to the teachers and administrators for doing such a fantastic job, because they really are knocking it out of the park.
Any other items?
And also now they're supporting our staff, the administration, along with the help of the Education Foundation, put out placards in the teachers' yards. Was that 2 weeks ago? It was wonderful. And I know the teachers appreciated it and the staff appreciated it. And it's just, everybody misses being together. It's a family, it's a community. They need to be together. And when we're zooming here on this screen, it's nice. It's really nice to see everybody's face. So I think the efforts that the administration has made to keep things like that happening, they send out videos to the kids on a regular basis. All of that stuff that's happening, it's happening all over the country, but it's happening in our backyard, and our people are doing a fabulous job, and I want to commend them. So keep up the good work.
I would like to also reiterate the appreciation that the administration has for the efforts of the High Point Education Foundation for their contribution, which was significant in the process of providing for those signs. The administration did go out and deliver them, as did a member of the Ed Foundation. I'm not sure if they would want me to give their name, but they not only volunteered to distribute and put out the signs, but they also participated in the overwhelming bulk of the cost. And I'm sure that everyone in the district is appreciative of that. Thank you very much.
I would just like to add, I'd like to congratulate one of our students, senior Travis Talamy. Travis was High Point's representative to the Greater Morris chapter of the National Football Foundation. He was our representative as a scholar athlete. I've known Travis many years. I coached him when he was younger. High Point should be proud of him. He's a fine young man, both in the classroom and out of the classroom on the playing field. His heart is as big as I've ever seen. And he was a real great representative for High Point at that National Football Foundation Scholar Athlete dinner. So I'd like to congratulate him and wish him the best of luck going forward in college as well.
I appreciate that, Dr. Carrazza. My own son, who played on the team and interacted with young Mr. Talamy frequently, speaks incredibly highly of him. He is a young man who is respectful, dignified, and honorable. And these are not always traits that are evident as much as they are in Mr. Talamy. And it is an honor to have him in our community, let alone as in our school. My son said of me, he's the toughest person he ever met. And so he speaks very highly of him. So thank you for that.
Any other comments?
I'd maybe just like to address the High Point Regional Class of 2020 and let them know that they are all in our hearts and our thoughts through this. And I'd ask our community to have faith in the administration and the board, that we're going to do whatever we can to celebrate the Class of 2020.
Okay, any other items? Seeing no other items, we'll move on to public comments. First thing I want to do is go back to Monica Rowland Orr, who submitted a comment earlier. She's from Frankfort Township. She says, as a senior parent, I want to thank the entire faculty, staff and administration for an outstanding job during this time. They are all simply amazing. In addition to being a parent, I'm also a superintendent in another school district. I've seen firsthand the number of mixed messages coming to districts from Trenton about what is permissible and what is not permissible for graduations. Unfortunately, it seems there is a bit of a disconnect between the Department of Education and the governor's office. I applaud Dr. Ripley and the administration for trying to navigate all this and share information with parents as best they can. Ultimately, I have every confidence that this administration and faculty will do all they can to recognize and celebrate our seniors to the extent they are allowed. I encourage parents who are concerned about the uncertainty of an in-person graduation to contact the Department of Education and the governor and ask the districts to be given concise and clear direction instead of mixed and changing messages. Thank you very much. And thank you, Ms. Orr. We have two more comments, if I may, if I find them. We have from Mr. Craig from Wantage. Thank you to the board for continuing to move toward a student-centered and inclusive environment for all students. And finally, a comment from Sharon Uchida. The name might sound familiar because I read two messages from a Sharon McAuliffe and a Sharon Uchida. And Sharon Uchida says, sorry about the double comment. I'm having a hard time with the chat, so it sent an email as well, as they're both sent at the same time. To be clear, my full name is Sharon McAuliffe Uchida. Ms. Uchida, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, and thank you very much. That's all we have for public comments at this point in time. Do we have any non-committee board member reports or comments? No other things? If other business, Jim?
No, regarding Oprah requests, we have not received any Oprah requests since our last meeting.
Okay, and then we have the penultimate item is that today is Jim's last board meeting with us. And I want to thank you so much, Jim. You've made me look only a little bit like a fool at these board meetings by helping out so much. I can't thank you enough. We'll miss you. We'll miss you a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Best of
Jim.
luck
Thank
to
you, Jim.
Good luck.
Thank you, Jim.
Good luck.
Good luck, Jim. Good luck.
Thank you.
And with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing nobody opposed, we're going to forego the second executive session. We were able to accomplish what we needed to in the first one. Thank you, everybody, for your time and for your patience for my questions. Have a great evening.
Good night.
Thank you.
folks.
Good night.